Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the RK Leadership Podcast, where we empower tomorrow's leaders through the sharing of knowledge, experience, and inspiring stories. I'm your host, Rob Kamranpoor, and today my very special guest is Cara Clairman. Before I pass it on to you, I'd like to thank you so much for joining me today and taking the time out of your busy schedule. Cara's the president and CEO of Plug and Drive. She's the ex-VP of OPG. She sits on various boards, and she's also a panelist in the upcoming Young
Right.
Professional Leadership Summit. Thank you very much, Cara, and welcome to the RK Leadership Podcast.
Thank you, Rob, for inviting me.
Uh,
Happy to be here.
Thank you. So we can dive right into it,
Sure.
Cara. You've been the driving force behind the growth of EV adoption in Canada. Can you share your journey and what led you to Plug and Drive?
It's a long and sordid tale, so I'll try to keep it snappy. As you mentioned, I was working at Ontario Power Generation, and in that role, I was VP of Sustainable Development. So all things environment kind of fell under my purview. And we were doing all kinds of things, biodiversity, energy efficiency, whatever things you can imagine that someone in that
That's
role
right.
would do. We had just been doing a massive off coal strategy, which actually was apparently, I've learned since, one of the largest emission reduction programs in North America. And once that was done, there was, just a lot less to do in terms of making improvements to the environmental performance of our generating fleet of plants for electricity. And EVs weren't even on the scene yet. Actually, it was such early days. We heard about them.
That's right.
But there wasn't one on the road yet. This is around 2008. And but we started hearing about them because our Darlington nuclear plant was right next to a GM facility.
Yes.
And we would occasionally hear from GM, and we learned that they were coming out with that Chevy Volt, which was their first car, and that the Nissan Leaf was coming out. And so, of course, a car run on electricity would be of interest to a large utility that sells electricity.
Yes.
And so I started looking into it. What would it take? I mean, Ontario wasn't ready at all for electric vehicles, as was anybody. And I pitched our CEO and said, we should do, some sort of project to learn, like what would Ontario need to do to be ready for the electric vehicle? And so he supported that, and we did a sort of a white paper, and then we held a conference, and this was all still under OPG. And we had this conference, and everybody came, like the automakers came and the utilities came. And I thought, there's something to this. Everyone's interested in this, but we really didn't know what it was going to be. And one thing led to another, and I thought, to really succeed, I would have to take it outside of OPG because I was just doing this kind of off the side of my desk. It was one of 100 projects, and I couldn't really devote time to it. And also, I would talk to people about it, and they would say, well, I'm not giving you guys any money. You're OPG. You have money.
Yeah.
And so I realized, okay, I need to have a different model if we want to fund something where all the utilities and all the automakers participate. And so actually I went back to the CEO with sort of a business case, and I said, you should pay me to leave and start up this nonprofit, because here's what my salary costs, and here's how much OPG could make if only 2% of the people in Ontario adopted electric cars in terms of plugging in, and it was a lot. And to my great surprise, he was like, okay. And then I'd never really thought, to be totally frank, I never really thought beyond like the pitch. I hadn't thought, what will I do if he says yes? And then I walked out of there going, oh my God, I think I just quit. And now I have to figure out what I'll do. So I left a few months later, and OPG supported me in that they gave me a leave of absence. So I had job security and I had a paycheck, but I didn't have any money, to do anything, So I thought, well, what could a small nonprofit even do, to help? So it started with a little bit of research. It was just me, in my computer. I hired a just graduating student on a grant, that you can get for recent grads.
That's right.
And he helped me figure out, like, what are we going to be? And luckily, I had lots of great advisors, help figure out, should we be for-profit, nonprofit, charity? What should we do? How should we set up? I got some free legal advice from, old colleagues, because I'm a recovering lawyer. And so one thing led to another. We hit on education, because what we realized is we're not going to make cars.
Yep.
We're not going to make charging station. Couldn't really make anything. We didn't have that kind of money. But what we could do is help people understand, what are EVs all about and why are they important? Why should we make the switch? And because I've always been a climate sort of educator, even in my old job,
That's
I used
right.
to go around the plants, OPG, educating the staff on why should they care about the plant, the plant environmental performance, for example. So I've sort of been in that. It made sense to me, and it fit with what I was all about. So our first EV day was, I think, 2011, and we just brought whatever cars we could get a hold of, which weren't too many.
Yeah.
I think we had 3 at Yonge and Dundas Square. We put them out, and we invited people to come and take a look. And we realized we were on to something. People were very interested. At that time, they didn't even know electric cars existed.
Yes.
Tesla didn't exist. There was no publicity, and so they were like, wow, this is electric. And we let people try the driving.
Yeah.
And we got a lot of like, wow, when they drove. And we realized, like, the drive is the thing, because they didn't realize, like, and still to this day, like 15 years later, that is like the core of what we do, is offer vehicles for test drive. Because people get in that car, and it doesn't have to be about the environment or how much money they're going to save or anything, but just that this is a good car. I could totally drive this car.
That's right.
Just that kind of like aha when they turn it on and they first go, is it on? Because they can't tell, because it doesn't have any sound. And then to realize, like, oh, wow, this is like a totally cool and good car.
Yes.
And in fact, a better car than any gas car you'll ever drive. It's super fun. And then you can think, and it's reduces your greenhouse gas emissions from transportation by 90+%. It's the biggest thing you can actually do in your personal life to reduce emissions, other than give up a car altogether or never set foot on a plane. After those 2 things, this is the thing. And most people are not going to do those first 2 things. So this is the number one thing.
Absolutely.
And so we're still at it.
Nice.
One driver at a time, and with a lot more funding and a lot more cars.
Nice. Absolutely.
But that's essentially the origin story.
Amazing. So one of the things you touched on is taking that risk by giving that proposal to your
Right.
CEO, and lo and behold, you kind of fired yourself on the spot.
Yeah. But I was ready for the next move, I wouldn't have done it if I wasn't ready for
Correct.
a move,
But not even having everything in place, Cara.
Right.
How important is it to take risks as a leader?
You have to have the courage to take risk. What I have found is actually all the good things that have happened in my career always came from taking a chance.
That's right.
Speaking up when people say, oh, no. When the CEO said he wants feedback on this or that, he didn't really mean it. He didn't mean from the VPs. He didn't mean, every time I have spoken up or sort of stepped out of line, it's always been a positive for me. So I feel like it's a real lessons learned for me, that it's always worth it to do that. Because what's the worst thing that could happen
right.
is he says no, and I still have my job. I mean, that's not a fireable offense to come up with an idea that somebody decides isn't the one for them. That's okay.
Exactly.
And actually, that skill has come in real handy now that I have to raise money, because you're pitching people day and night, and you get a lot of no's.
Yes.
So sort of being resilient to no is a really great skill to have. Just on to the next.
Absolutely.
Refine the pitch, try again, It's, I don't mind people saying no. In fact, sometimes I wish they would say no earlier and not kind of drag it
Waste your
out.
time.
Sometimes people hate to tell you no, but just come out with it already
That's
because
right.
you don't want to waste everybody's time.
Exactly. So you mentioned two great words, courage and resilience. So for a lot of young people out there, what's your advice for them to build courage and build that
Yes.
resilience? What would you do?
So it's really important to, try things that are a little bit outside your comfort zone. And I know not everyone, for example, loves public speaking.
Yes.
And people say, oh, well, that's not for me. But I would say it has to be for everyone.
That's right.
Because you may never get up in front of a big audience, but you're definitely going to speak up in a meeting or in an elevator or somewhere, talk to your neighbor. And so getting comfortable talking about what you do is really important. And people joke about, have your elevator pitch,
Yes.
whether it's about yourself or about your product or depending on what you're doing, you do need it. Because I've actually had it where I stepped into an elevator and the new CEO of OPG, who hadn't started, stepped into the elevator and we were alone. And I could have just been silent the whole way
That's
up.
right.
But I had seen his photo and I knew it was him. And so, of course, I stuck my hand out and says, welcome. It's so great to have you, blah, 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 all the way up. And then when the doors shut and he got out, I thought, oh, my God. I just yapped his ear off for a minute. Oh, no, it was such a mistake. I shouldn't have done that. Well, honestly, again, best thing that ever happened. After that, he was always inviting me to things. He was always putting me forward for opportunities. He
Nice.
remembered that.
Yes.
And he's a human who was on his first day on the job, who felt also nervous. And I made him feel, he told me later, I made him feel welcome. He made him feel positive about the company. So you just never know when that chance is going to come.
Exactly.
And you do have to be okay with speaking up. So I say to people who don't like it, practice. Just
Absolutely.
practice it.
Yeah.
It gets easier.
Get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah. Super important.
Awesome. Thanks, Cara. What's the biggest leadership lesson you've learned from building a nonprofit that's transforming Canada's transportation sector?
Wow, the biggest lesson. Well, again, I think sometimes the biggest lessons come from a big challenge that happens.
Yes.
So we actually had sort of a crisis, I would say a crisis of funding when the government changed.
Yes.
We had a really great kind of funding relationship with a government that changed in Ontario, and all that funding just disappeared overnight. And it was quite stressful, but what you realize is good advice for your stock portfolio is good advice for any business you're in, which is diversify.
Yes.
And luckily, we did have quite good diversification already, but it forced us to really be disciplined about like diversity of funding because one is always going to drop. And hopefully it won't be your biggest one like it was for us. But, you have to be prepared for that to happen and sort of always have the plan B ready.
Okay. Awesome. How do you keep your team motivated when you're working in an industry where you do face the big wins and the big challenges?
Yeah, it's always changing and it's very fast paced. In nonprofit, it's always a challenge to raise money, but lots of my friends who are in for-profit say, I'm essentially a nonprofit too. It's hard to raise money.
That's
and it's very similar. You still have to pitch and you still, so the only difference is we just don't keep the profit in. We're just constantly investing in the business. It's not, we can't take it out. It's basically the exact same issue. So I would say, learning how to raise money is a huge thing. And I think in nonprofit, a lot of the folks go into it because they believe in a particular cause. So if you think of the nonprofits, it could be social work, it could be environment, it could be, the elderly, whatever, cause.
Yep.
And the people go into that because they really believe in that cause. And then you'll hear it throughout. Oh, but raising money. Oh, it's almost like dirty,
Yes.
and you have to we can't do anything if we don't have money. So
That's
you
right.
have to get over that idea that it's a dirty word or a bad thing and that it actually is an opportunity
Yeah.
for somebody. And if they say no to that opportunity, that's okay. It's not for them.
Yeah.
Just move on and find somebody who appreciates it.
Absolutely.
So, I think, again, it's getting comfortable. And I really think everyone in the nonprofit, if they work in the admin office, if they work in IT, everyone is a fundraiser because they're talking to their friends about the organization. Everyone should be part of it. This isn't sort of like we've got a fundraising team and that's it. Everyone's in it. We all have to believe enough that we're okay talking to our friends and family about it.
That's right. So again, you talked about the mission. Many leaders struggle with, balancing the mission and the business realities.
Yeah.
How do you stay true to your vision while ensuring long-term sustainability?
Yeah, actually, that's really hard. In the early days, sometimes we would get offers that went like this. I love what you're doing.
But
we'd like to give you X money, but we want you to do this, not exactly what is sort of in your mission.
Yes.
And in those early days, you need money so much that you might stray outside to bring some money in. But at a certain point, you have to learn to say no to those and stick inside your lane because it's not possible to please everyone. And you are going to end up down a path you don't want to go.
That's right.
So, at some point, like we were like, this is too far a stretch for us. So one for us has been staying agnostic, brand agnostic. We are completely brand agnostic when it comes to brand of car or brand of charger. Mm-hmm. We'll display and work with anybody. And the idea is to give the consumer that full experience to try all the different brands. Now, there have been lots of automakers and charger brands who have tried to get us to do an exclusive with them so that we're just promoting their brand or just their charger. And we've had to say no to that despite it being lucrative because it would destroy our relationship with the other brands.
That's right.
And we've now we're known as an agnostic organization, trusted advisor. And people, for whatever reason, sometimes feel uncomfortable at a dealership because they think that they're being sold or whatever. We're not selling anything. Mm-hmm. Plenty of great dealers, by the way, that are not doing that. But I think people have that idea in their head. And so they can come to us. They can learn all about all the brands and what's available and what's in their budget. And then they can go and buy the car from a dealer. We don't take any business away from a dealer. In fact, we send them business that's easier for them. They don't have to do all the work.
That's right.
We send people kind of ready to buy. And we've stayed true to that. And that's been challenging at times, but in the end, it pays off.
So when you're dealing with other leaders from other organizations and, trying to collaborate with them, what if their values don't align with yours?
Right. That's a challenge. So we've had some folks, for example, there are nonprofits and charities that take a fair bit of money from fossil fuel companies. We've not been faced with that one.
Good.
And, to be honest, that would be a real tough one. If it depends on the context, right? So I understand why organizations do it because they can do a lot of good with that money and maybe, the money's going to get spent somehow. So I can understand it.
That's right.
That's one that would probably cause us to pause and think twice.
Reflect. Okay, good. Now, I want to shift to the future of EVs.
Sure.
And get some of your perspectives.
Sure.
What are the top barriers that's preventing Canadians from switching to EVs?
Yeah, so it hasn't changed much from our earliest days. So we surveyed people from day one. And so we have a lot of great data on this. And we asked them, what are their concerns? Why? Are they thinking of switching? And if they're not, why not? And the number one reason has always been cost. And then number two has been range or some version of that. charging infrastructure and or range, which is kind of related. And it's still to this day, that is number one. And I think, unfortunately, the reason for that is there's sort of a hangover from the very early days of Tesla where the vehicles were very expensive. And I think it's stuck in people's heads, EV equals expensive.
Yeah.
And so people think that they can't afford an EV. But what they don't realize is that the running cost, or what people call like the operational cost,
That's right.
is so much lower that actually you could buy a much more expensive car and you'd still be ahead. There have been lots of studies on this, comparing a Honda Civic to a Lexus or a Tesla, and you're in the money after just a few years. And so the reality is most Canadians can afford an EV. But they don't know it. They don't know it. They don't know all about the savings, and they don't know also about used EVs and how affordable those can be. And so a lot of the work we do isn't so much on explaining to people why they're better for the environment. Most people have accepted that, but explaining why they're better for the pocketbook.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now, there's also challenges that come with EVs in terms of, our infrastructure.
Yes.
Right. And I think, again, we've set dates to go all electric.
Yes.
And the reality is, from a utility perspective, at least, we're not really set up for it.
Not yet.
Not yet. Do you think we're going to get there by the time this
the mandate?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, look, what I would say is, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, we don't have to hit 100% in 2035. I mean, if it's 90 or 80, it doesn't much matter to me. It's important that we be working towards that goal, because it's better actually for consumers all around, better financially and better for the environment. And there are very few other things that we can do that can achieve such big reductions in a short period of time. And so I'm a supporter of that going ahead. But I do think people overestimate how difficult the infrastructure barrier is. If you live in a condo or an apartment, it's a significant challenge.
That's right.
If you live in a single family home or a townhouse, it's a breeze.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of how we have to explain it to people, that if you live in a home or a townhouse, and lots of Canadians do, you'll have no problem. I mean, maybe twice a year, you want to take a big road trip and you're concerned about that, take a different car. Don't make your choice based on a trip or two a year. Make your choice based on the 98% of your driving. And you're going to save so much money that you can rent a car 10 times a year and you won't.
Yeah.
You'll be able to afford it. I'm on the ultra low nighttime price in Ontario right now, which is 2.8 cents a kilowatt hour. It cost me 50 cents to fill up overnight now in Ontario. Wow. It is so cheap that almost you can't believe.
That's right.
It's basically free. And so you want people to see how much they're going to save. And then all these issues that seem difficult kind of go away.
That's right. Absolutely. So again, having the environmental background, I'm personally not an EV expert. We're starting to, work on a lot of the chargers, etc. One of the things that's come up over the years is the recycling of the batteries and the impact on the environment.
Yes.
And again, what are your thoughts? And if you can share your expertise.
Actually, that's a good one. I do get this one a lot. It's actually a great story. There's a great Canadian story here. First of all, in terms of the manufacturing of the batteries, right now, mostly they do come from overseas.
Yes.
And so the footprint is more. And so when people say, it takes more energy, therefore more emissions to make an EV than a gas car, that is true. But most of the emissions come from the driving, not from the making. So it gets swamped over time. But it is true. But Ontario in particular in Canada is poised to be making a lot more batteries here soon, which will reduce the footprint, also Canadian jobs and all that. So it's a good story for Canada. and it's about 80 to 90% recyclable. Now, no one was recycling it because there wasn't, many available. But if you think about our phones and our laptops, we already have a lot of experience recycling lithium-ion batteries.
That's right.
And in fact, there's many Canadian experts in recycling of those kind of batteries. And they're all getting into the recycling of the car batteries.
Yes.
But if you ask them how many they have, they say not too many, because the car batteries are lasting so much longer than they expected.
Yes.
So if you think the first EV was sort of 2011, and we're in 2025, so we're about 14 or so years in, and there's not many batteries coming out yet, that's a good story, right? That
Absolutely.
means at least the studies are showing that the battery will probably outlast the body of the car. And so people don't have to worry, A, that the battery is going to have to be replaced by a big, expensive battery. So that's not likely to happen to many people. And that's why the automakers warranty them for so long, 8 years, some even 10 years, because they know that they're not going to have to pay out too many times.
That's right.
So, yeah, it's a good story.
But what I heard, Cara, is they do have to be replaced once they hit the 80%.
So,
life,
well, once they will only charge up to 80%, 75 maybe.
Yeah.
They're not as great for the car range, obviously, but they can go into what they call secondary use.
Yes.
So they can go into backup storage. They can back up a
Yes.
charging station. They can back up a gas station.
Yeah.
By the way, gas stations don't run when there's a power out. It takes energy, electricity to run a gas station. So there are these, they can back up hospitals. So they can be, instead of natural gas, they can be used as a backup.
Repurposed.
For, and they are being now used for that purpose. And then they can be recycled after that, which is about to 80 or 90%. And there's a number of Canadian companies doing it right now.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's a good story. And this idea that the batteries would end up in landfill, they're so valuable, they will not.
Yeah.
There's gonna be fights over them. Everybody wants those old batteries.
And I think that's the key, like learning and understanding how to repurpose them.
Yes.
And I'm seeing a lot of that.
Yeah,
happening
it's
right now.
exciting. I mean, they're a little bit ahead in Japan if in this area, because they had the first Leafs and they kind of did a bigger push early. And so there were a lot of Nissan Leafs in Japan. And so there were a lot of batteries that came out, and they're using them for secondary use to back up, houses and factories and all sorts of stuff. It's quite interesting. And also, like when there's a power out, that can, instead of your Generac or whatever, your, backup generator at your cottage or whatever, a stack of batteries.
Yeah. Awesome. Now, do you see with the tariff situation that we're going through, is that going to have an impact on the EV market?
Yes, it does. So far, not much, but it probably will. The good news is there are a lot of brands that don't come from the United States.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not great for the American brands,
Yeah.
but it's fine for Hyundai and Kia and Toyota and all the so-called foreign brands.
That's right.
Are going to ship direct. And they're not going through the U.S., and so they'll avoid the tariff. And we're hearing that now. And, even if they did have a facility in the U.S., they'll make sure vehicles come from another route.
Yeah, exactly. There's ways around it.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Cara, how do you think utilities, government, and private companies can better collaborate to accelerate the EV adoption?
Yes, we could do better. We're doing pretty well, but Canada is hovering around, I would say, 10th in the world in terms of EV adoption, which is okay. And we could be better. And I would say some of the things that other countries have done, like we don't have to reinvent the wheel. So, for example, if you want to look at Norway, which is the leading place, which is basically at like 97% new car sales, instead of an incentive on the EV, they put a disincentive on the gas car. It's a gutsy move, but it worked, and they've got, because an EV was actually cheaper to buy than a gas car. So that was a big move for them. Things that we could do here that would be really easy. We haven't updated our national building code to ensure rough-in. I'm not saying you got to put chargers in every new apartment building. I'm saying you got to rough-in for the electrical capacity, so that you could put EV chargers in. And we really should have that in our national building code. So there's lots of buildings still being built today without that. That seems crazy when we all know where, to quote Gretzky, where the puck is going, right? We know where it's going. And so we shouldn't be building buildings that are going to last 50 to 100 years or whatever without that. So that's one easy thing. And it's actually so cheap to rough it in.
Yes.
It's very expensive to retrofit.
Absolutely.
So that's an easy thing. We should also be getting our companies to do more. I think everyone turns to the government for incentives. And, they do, and that's great. But companies can also put in workplace charging and can offer their own employees an incentive to switch to an EV.
Yes.
By the way, they pay per kilometer for a lot of people to use their personal car to drive on business.
That's right.
And that's like now 72, 75 cents. Well, if you had employees driving EVs and you gave them a small incentive to switch to an EV, they could pay 20 cents and it would still be a lot. It would still be more than the employees paying at home to charge.
Yeah.
And so there are innovative things that companies could do to encourage employees that they're currently not doing. Those are just two sort of inexpensive examples that I think would really help.
Awesome. No, I really like that example for sure. We do a lot of driving in this.
And it costs companies a lot of money.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And by the way, they give incentives on wellness and all sorts of stuff. This would really benefit everyone.
That's right. Absolutely. Now, as you might know, I work for an Indigenous utility engineering company.
Yes.
And how will you see the EV adoption benefiting the Indigenous and rural communities where infrastructure challenges are often greater?
Yes. Well, we've actually done a number of events with Indigenous communities in their home communities. And we've definitely faced that challenge. So first of all, Level 2 charging is usually enough for almost anybody. And so to get some used EVs up there and some, if they're in the more remote areas, and some local charging, that is the way to start. A lot of people do drive far, but there are also a lot of local drivers.
Yeah.
So if they're just driving into town and back, driving locally in their area, they could totally use a used EV in that area.
So what's the one habit or mindset that has been a key to your success as a CEO?
I would say of all the things, there's a word I think that a lot of people who write self-help books use called grit. But I do think stick-to-itiveness, or whatever the word is a super important quality. And I think I have that. I don't give up easily. And I think you have to be a person who doesn't give up easily to succeed, especially if you have to raise money.
That's right.
You have to be willing to keep trying. You can't let the no's make you upset.
Yes.
You have to just move on. You couldn't be upset for one day. You give yourself one day, and that's it.
That's right.
You have to really be willing, put yourself out there, and then if you get no, you just can't take it too personally.
That's right. That's right. Being able to control your emotions is super important in leadership.
And also, I think having a positive outlook.
Yes.
I do tend to be an optimist. I've always been like that.
Beautiful.
So I always imagine, well, it's going to improve. It's gonna turn around, whatever it is, whatever the challenge.
That's right.
So that helps.
Awesome. Who are some of your mentors or role models in leadership, and how have they influenced you?
Sure. So I've had lots of great opportunities over the years. One of the earliest ones. So I had a great job. I actually had one of my first jobs was one of the greatest jobs I ever had. I was a clerk to the judges of the Court of Appeal. And that was like a job out of law school. And it was a job that a lot of people, I think, didn't want because they thought, oh, it just delays, getting on with it to a law firm or whatever. I thought it seemed like it's like a once in a lifetime chance, and they only take people that 1 year, and these are the people who help them write their decisions, help them with whatever they need. And I met these Court of Appeal judges, and I learned so many skills from them.
Yeah.
In terms of good writing, good editing, good public speaking, and the importance of all these skills. And also just they were so really senior people, and we were just out of school. And like everything, there's a lot of different personalities.
Yes.
And some were so kind and generous with their time and helped us when we were looking for jobs and wrote us letters and all this stuff. And you think like, oh, somebody like that, isn't going to do that for you. And so it always reminds you to turn around and do that. Now
That's right.
now I'm sitting in a so-called senior chair. Although sometimes I don't feel it, but I know that I am. And so to do the same and help people when you have the opportunity.
Amazing. Yeah, absolutely. I think helping, it's so fulfilling at the end of the day when you've come to where, you can look back and see all your great
And so I had
achievements.
these amazing judges who advised me, and then and I kept in touch with some of them for
Nice.
years. And then at my law firm, my first big law firm job, I'm still friendly with one of the partners who sort of supervised me early on.
Nice.
And he has taught me so many things. And I've also had the chance at OPG to work with a lot of amazing people. You find them everywhere you go. And often, because I am a woman, often I've had both male and female role models. At OPG, there's a lot of men, engineers. And so you find the role models that you can find. And if they're men and they're willing to support you, I had some great mentors who were men. And then I also found some women who could help you with the things that maybe the men didn't see or
That's right,
understand. So, I've been really fortunate.
Awesome. Thank you. Before we end this podcast, we've come to a segment where I call rapid fire questions.
Oh, okay.
I'll be asking you a series of questions, and
Sure.
the first thing that comes to mind,
Sure.
what was the first car you ever owned?
Oh, I had a Mazda GLC, very used.
Nice. Awesome. What's the one word that describes Cara best?
Probably positive.
Awesome. What's the one leadership book that you recommend?
Oh, there's so many that I really like. But there's one, I hope I'm going to get the title right, that I really love. And it says we're all in sales.
Mm.
And it helps people get over the idea that they're in sales when they think of that as a negative. And that any job you have that you're in sales, you're selling yourself,
That's
you're
right.
selling a product, you're selling expertise, whatever it is.
Awesome. If you were in leading Plug and Drive, what career would you see yourself in?
Okay. So I'd either do landscaping. I love doing landscaping. I do it at home.
It's very different.
But the other thing I think that I would do is I would help other charities and nonprofits raise money. I've learned how to do it, and I love to help other groups learn how to do it.
Amazing. Awesome. I've got some questions for you afterwards.
Yeah.
And lastly, where can people find you?
Well, they can find me at Plug and Drive. Cara at pluganddrive.ca is my email. And check out pluganddrive.ca if you want to test drive an EV. That's where you find us.
Awesome. I'll be there.
All right. Awesome.
Car. Thank you so much again. I greatly appreciate
My
your time
pleasure.
this afternoon with
It was
us.
fun.
Thank you. And for all those listening, and if you've got any questions for Cara, please drop it in the comments below and I'll make sure it gets to her, or you can contact her directly and I'll share her contact information on the podcast. Until the next episode, take care, everybody.